Hi guys, I think this might be the first time that I have done a video like this, but I'm doing my favourite books of 2020. I'm just really excited to talk about all the books that I loved. They're going to be kind of brief. If you do want like more full reviews, I've done like reading vlogs, I've done obviously monthly wrap-ups, and for those books that I've already got a specific like vlog for or a dedicated review for, I'll just link those in the cards. So hoping to get through this relatively quick. I'll give you a brief synopsis, I'll give you my rating and some thoughts and feelings, but I'll try to keep it brief because I've already like gushed about these books throughout the year. Sporadic. I will say not all of these books were necessarily released in 2020, it's just that I read them in 2020, so there's that. So the first book I've actually got a full review on, again I'll link that in the cards for you, and that is Angel Mage by Garth Nix. This was his latest, I think he's had another book come out since, but this was at the time his latest adult, I think his first adult fantasy, and this was amazing. This came out February 2020 and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Just briefly, because I've already got a review on it, it is taking like angel magic basically. We're following a few characters, there's 4 main characters we're sort of following that all sort of eventually build up to this main plot of this overarching story about Lilith, who is it Lilith? I can't remember her name, who basically was able to communicate strongly with the gods and bond with them in a way, and she's basically come back and they're all kind of connected, so it does have this really cool angel magic where they can channel an angel to be able to perform and do things. It was really, really cool. But yeah, I'll leave the better synopsis for that review video that I've got. Oh, did I say it was released in February? I didn't mean that, I meant I read it in February. But yeah, another book I read in February was Pet by HardcoreCupcakeHailstorm. This is a middle grade book which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adored it. I wasn't really sure where this would go or what to expect from this, and I was blown away. We're following a young girl called Jam, and it's a bit magical realism. All her life she is told all the monsters in the city of Lucille have gone. They have, you know, been gotten rid of, all the good people got rid of, and they mean monsters more. It's a bit of both really. They mean monsters kind of on a morality scale and also fantastical in some regard maybe, but basically something magical happens regarding her mum's painting, and she is told that there's still a monster and it might be hurting someone she really cares about. So she basically, her and her friend go on this mission to kind of I was just getting a bit silly, to flush the monster out, confront them. This is so good, so strong of a story, and I think it's handled really well. There's a lot of diversity in this as well. Jam, our main character, is a transgender girl. Our author, I believe, I'm sorry if this is incorrect, but I believe HardcoreCupcakeHailstorm is non-binary. What else? There's loads, so much amazing content in this, but the way it's written is just accepted. I love it when books are diverse, but just naturally diverse. Like, I don't know why that's just not a thing generally. So yeah, I absolutely adored this one. Although the whole series for this next one is a favourite of mine, I thought I'd start with the first book that obviously introduced me to the series and which kind of put my love to get started on it, if that makes sense, and that is Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire, which I read in March, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. So this is a bit of portal magic. I think this is the first book that I read this year that really kind of introduced me to that as a subgenre, and I love magical schools, now I love portal magic, and this is kind of that together. So basically it's one of those sort of stories of what if Alice wanted to return to Wonderland, what if Dorothy wanted to go back to Oz but they couldn't. So in this world, these kids have been to magical worlds, they've found their door, and for whatever reason they've kind of either been kicked out or found their way out and haven't been able to go back, and so there's this school for them which helps them to kind of acclimatise back to the normal world, but still with the hope of one day you might find your door again. Don't return, if you like, go back there and don't return to the normal world if you can help it. So yeah, it's so cool. There's they're like little novellas and they're all like companion series. The next one comes out in the UK in January or February, I think, so pretty soon. And yeah, there's about what 5-6 of these now, and they're so quick to get through, but they are packed with so much. I love all the characters, amazing. You follow like a different character story each time, and each other story is like a prequel, if that makes sense. Is about like the door that they were talking about. It's really, really cool. I've got like a reading vlog for all the books. I think the first 3 books I read in one vlog, and then the next 2 books I read in another vlog, so I'll link those if you're interested. Next up, another book that I've got a review for already, so I won't talk too much on that, but I read a modern classic, and it was a very disturbing one. It's a problematic kind of story, but it was interesting to read, and that is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. I can never pronounce his surname properly. This one I read in May, and I gave it 5 stars, and I think everybody knows what Lolita is about, but it was such an interesting experience. It took me so long to read it, for sure, but it was such an interesting character study, very disturbing, very gross, but one that I'm glad to finally have read. So that video is floating somewhere if you would like to watch and see my proper thoughts. Also watched one of the movies and reviewed it in that video too. Another book I read in May that became a fast favourite, and for good reason, that is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. I don't know if that's how you pronounce the surname, I do apologise. This is so beautiful. I feel like it came out at the perfect time when everybody was really kind of lost and confused and unsure about the future of the world and their personal lives and stuff like that, and then I just stumbled on this in Asda, and it honestly made me kind of teary. Like, it was such a beautiful story. It is just a collection of illustrations about this boy, the mole, the fox and the horse, and it's just so insightful. The illustrations are beautiful, kind of, it makes me think of calligraphy but in art form, if that makes sense, with like some watercolour, and it's just like random quotes and basically things to make you feel happy and grateful for life and ask the big questions and know you're not alone, and it's just so beautiful. I really recommend getting this and just flicking through. It's one of those books that I will definitely be picking up again during my low points, but also in my high points too, because it's just a nice, beautiful, heartwarming reminder that there is good in the world and there is wonder in the world, and you're not alone even if you are apart from loved ones like at the moment. So a book I read in June, which I absolutely adored, as you can see from all the tabs, is Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Renee Lodge. I've got a review for this one as well, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. This was fantastic. I don't often read non-fiction, but everything was happening. I needed to educate myself as a black young woman, particularly in like British history regarding black people and the kind of unspoken history of what happens, and especially at that time when the Black Lives Matter movement was in its full throw. This was the perfect time for me to pick this up and kind of throw myself into it, naturally learn and teach myself, because Lord knows I didn't get taught at school. But yeah, I've got a full review on this one as well. This is amazing. A book I don't have but I also read in June, and that is The Black Kids by Christina Having to Read. I gave that one 5 out of 5 stars. It was amazing. Again, I have a review on it. It is fantastic. I don't think the author even realised this when it was published, but it came out at the perfect time because it was like almost mirroring what was going on like in America and stuff like this, but it's a bit of historical fiction because it's in around the 90s, I believe, like early 90s, and yeah, it's like riots, protests. This young girl, basically, she's not just one of the kids anymore, one of the girls, she's the black kid, and she's in a very privileged rich household in a very privileged white neighbourhood and school, and when certain incidents happen, it kind of makes her view things differently. Yeah, it's awesome. Definitely check out that video. I've probably run out of card space, so if you can't find it in the cards, look in the description. I'm sure I'll link those there too. Another book that I did a review on. As you can tell, I've done quite a few reviews this year because there were some amazing books. Like, I was blown away by some books, and that one I read in July, and this is A Brief History of 7 Killings by Marlon James, which I gave a 5 stars. This was fantastic. It's kind of advertised as being sort of central around Bob Marley and his attempted assassination and stuff, but it's really not about him at all. I mean, they don't even mention his name in the book, he's just referred to as the singer. It's really about all the lives of the people kind of affected and surrounding Bob Marley in Jamaica, in America, like just people that are somehow, whether closely connected or distantly connected, and it's just amazing. It's a chunky one, it took me a while to read, and it does have quite a few perspectives, but if you can get through it and sort of persevere, it is a gem. It's such an amazing book, and it won the Man Booker Prize 2015, which I can totally understand. I love this one. Another book that I read through NetGalley that absolutely blew me away was Mrs. Death by Selena Godden, which I also read in July and gave a 5 out of 5 stars. This one was amazing. It talks about death and grief closely. In this book, death is personified as the most unseen person in history, which is an old black woman, and in this story she is recounting, well, it sounds funny saying her life, but her life and tragedies and everything around death and grief to a young man called Wolf, who's had quite a few instances with death and grief in his young life, and he's writing down her story, and it's so, it's very, what's the word? It's kind of experimental. I would say it's speculative fiction. I want to say that could be a term for it, but I don't really know what that means, but I feel like it fits it maybe. And yeah, it's like almost like a magical realism. I'd say it's quite literary as well. It is phenomenal. It is a weird reading experience, but I'm not saying that as a negative at all. I love a bit of weird, and this one was that. It was fantastic. I don't know if I'm wrong in saying, but I think it might be the author's debut novel. She's a poet usually, but I think this is her first like novel work, if I remember correctly, and blown away. I'll definitely be keeping an eye out on stuff that she brings out in the future. It's fantastic. In August, I have 3 favourites in August, and one of those was Lanny by Max Porter, which I gave 5 stars. This is another kind of magical realism story. Oh my god, it was fantastic. There was just so much in it. It's also almost like Mrs. Death. It's got a quirky kind of writing style, so that I'd say it's like a little bit of mixed media in a way, but in this sense it's got like words written weirdly all over the page, and like it changes to like almost like an, what do you call, like an interview style later on in the book, and it's really interesting. I'd never read anything by this author before, but I didn't realise at the time, but Grief is a Thing with Feathers is a book that I've been wanting to read for a while, and I didn't know that they were the same author, so I think I'll probably go back and read that at some point. But sorry, I digress. Lanny is about, it's about so much actually, but really there's this young boy, how do I describe it? There's this village that we're following. We're reading about all these people's lives in this village, and the village has this sort of personified spirit called Dead Papa Toothwort, and he kind of is this constant presence of this village. He kind of watches over the place. You hear snippets of conversation through him, but his main interest is a young boy called Lanny, because he's very in tune with the magic of nature, the wonder of life. He's almost like a little elf boy. I think people call him that, like quite endearing, but also people are quite mean as well, because he is a bit unusual. And yeah, it's almost like seeing him grow up, something kind of bad happens, and you also get Dead Pepper Toothwort's kind of narration on what's happening, snippets of other people's lives in the village. Oh my god, it's really amazing. I'm probably not selling it right, but go back to my August wrap up, I think I talk about it a bit better. Fantastic book. Again, another one that I wasn't sure what really to expect. Again, very literary as well, very magical and whimsy, but also quite gritty and dark with some of the topics that come up, and some of the things that are described and explained. But I loved it. I love how they kind of mesh together and work. Another favourite of August was If You Come Softly by Jacqueline Woodson. This was the first book that I read by this author, and I soon followed up with the sequel called Behind You. This one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars, and it is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. It is basically about the relationship between these two main characters, Jeremiah and Ellie, who, you know, despite the odds are trying to make a go of it, trying to be together despite racism and things like that. And it is tragic, obviously. If you know the story of Romeo and Juliet, you know it doesn't end very happily, but even still I was like blown away. I was shocked. I was quite teary, and it's such a short book as well, but it does so much. It's amazing. I'm so glad though that there was a sequel, because I felt like the kind of fallout of what happens in this at the end was kind of a bit sped over, and I didn't feel satisfied, because although it's obvious what had to happen, it just didn't feel like I didn't get closure from it, if that makes sense. But the sequel really does kind of wrap it up better and flesh it out a little bit more, that I feel satisfied with it. If you go into this, just know that you probably should read the sequel after if you don't feel satisfied like I did at the end. Another book I read through a NetGalley which I absolutely adored was Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams, and I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. I'd never felt so, as with the black kids actually in some ways, with Queenie I'd never felt so seen. Oh my god, it was such an experience. Basically it's a contemporary. I don't read many contemporaries, but this one just spoke to me. Queenie has she's in interracial relationships. She is of Caribbean descent. She has a grandmother that kind of reminded me of mine. When she was interacting with her cousins, I was thinking of my cousins. Like, there was so many little things, even if it wasn't exactly the same, like I really felt seen in a character that was like that, you know. I loved it. But poor Queenie, she's having such a hard time. She's really quite a self-destructive character, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. She is, in the beginning of the story, on a break with her boyfriend Tom, and she just kind of does really self-deprecating things that is fine. Like, she goes on a lot of dates and has a lot of like one night stands, which is fine if you want, but she's not looking after her sexual health, she's not looking after her mental health, and really what she's doing to herself is quite damaging, because she's neglecting herself really just for like sexual gratification, which she's not even really enjoying at the end of it, and she meets some really nasty people, and yeah, everything's kind of just falling out. She has a tumultuous relationship with her mother, and she's coming back on the scene. Her relationship with her friends are breaking because she's not kind of pulling her weight and showing effort into the friendship, and lots of stuff happen, but ultimately it is a story of hope. She does eventually come out on the other end. She tries to make a go of life properly once she has that closure of many things that she needed, and yeah, she starts to treat herself kindly, and it's such an amazing book. I really was absolutely blown away. How many times have I said that in this video? I adored it. I got another non-fiction here. This one I read in September, and again, as I say, I don't read a lot of non-fiction, but this one is one I've been wanting to read since it came out, and that is Educated by Tara Westover, and this was so interesting. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars as well. Most of these books are 5 out of 5 stars actually. Yeah, I probably should have just prefaced that. This is basically an autobiography about Tara Westover, who grew up in a kind of radical religious environment. Her father was very end of days. This is happening, like, we have to prepare for the end of days, we're going to be saved, blah blah blah. And it was very toxic, a very toxic environment, especially for a young girl to grow up in, because a lot of things, she was basically brainwashed, but there's just so much into it, and she's basically going over her life, over a story, and how she managed to come out of that and give herself an education, and kind of take herself out of that situation, which was really undoubtedly hard. A lot of the time she kind of breaks and goes back to her family knowing that it's an environment that isn't healthy for her, but it is just another story full of hope, full of inspiration. I don't know how this woman had the strength to do what she did. Yeah, amazing. Really enjoyed it, would recommend. I also read in September The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, which I gave, surprise, surprise, a 5 stars. I really would like to get a physical copy of this because it was phenomenal. It's another kind of magical school, magical home setting, and in this world we follow Linus, I think is his name. I want to say Lionel, but I think it's Linus, he lives a very mediocre life, but he works in a company that regulates magical beings. So his job is to go to children's home that cares for magical children, to make sure that it is up to par, that it's doing what it should be doing, all that sort of stuff. He is then challenged with this very big case that he's surprised that he's got. Like, he is like a nobody, as so to speak. He's very bland, very boring, goes to work, that's it, like he has no life. And he's shocked that he's tasked with this because it seems very above his pay grade. But he is tasked to go to this school, or this home, sorry, that he's never heard of, nobody's ever heard of, for good reason, you find out, because there are potentially very dangerous children living there. And there is a kind of like a subplot of why he's sent there and all these things, but it is amazing. It is so heartwarming, it's beautiful. The children there are so funny, particularly Lucy, definitely one of my favourite characters. And just seeing the growth in Linus is amazing, especially when you consider he's an older man. So you would have thought, oh, how can it be a coming of age story if he's like in his late 40s, 50s or whatever? But it really is quite a coming of age story. He's kind of learning about himself and accepting himself in many new ways that you wouldn't have expected, he wouldn't have expected, and going to this home really changes him for the better. And yeah, it's a fantastic, funny, heartwarming, beautiful story. I really loved it. It's another book that I feel like I read at the perfect time, you know. Okay, we're coming up to the close now. I've only got 2 more books left, and they're both physical ones, so I can hold them up, and they're both recent ones, obviously. So this one I read in November, and that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Oh my god, another story where I felt so seen, because it really talks about mental health and like the struggles of it, and how, again, you're not alone. Because although, not to diminish how you're feeling personally, but a lot of people have had fleeting feelings like this or something similar. Basically, a lot of people can relate, even though you might be going through a time where you feel completely alone. And this book just summed it up. Chef's kiss, fantastic. It is about Nora Seed, who decides to end her life. And when she does that, she finds herself in this sort of in-between world, which is the Midnight Library. And in this library, she can sort of try on different lives, so to speak, that are all hers, but in different parallel universes where she might have made like a really small change of a decision or a big decision that changed the course of her life. And so she can try that on to see where she could really be happy, and just to kind of see what else there was out there had she chosen a different path. And it's so amazing. Again, another book you go into thinking, oh god, this might be really depressing, but it is one full of wonder and hope, and it was fantastic. And lastly, a favourite book from December is and of course of the year, all of these books are my favourites of the year, is The $10,000 of January by Alex E. Harrow. And oh my god, I was not expecting to love this as much as I did. I didn't know, again, what to expect going into this, but it was phenomenal. I won't go into too much depth about this just because I've literally just put up my wrap up for December, so just go ahead to go into that video if you'd like to hear my thoughts on this. But it was fantastic. Basically, we're following January. She's in the care of a rich man who is interested in like old artifacts and finding them and keeping them. She lives a very controlled life, and she's looked at quite poorly by others in society because she's got dark skin. They don't know where she's from, but they call her like a half-breed and stuff. It's really horrible. But when she's with this man, rich white man, she's sort of got a protection, if that makes sense. So it's a bit messed up because it's like she's living this best life, but at the same time she's like a little doll, a little artifact, and other people don't see her as like a person properly. Anyway, she stumbles on this book, and it becomes quite clear that it's there's a lot of meaning regarding doors and regarding January's life. So it's so cool. It's like a book within a book, a story about stories. She's reading snippets from these books periodically, but also she is narrating her life and then how things connect, and it's fantastic. It's so clever. I absolutely adored this one. So yeah, if you do want more in-depth thoughts, check out my wrap-up. Anyway, that is it for this video. It was actually longer than I expected. I kind of got a bit excited and rambled on. I do apologise. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if any of those were your favourites as well, and what your favourite book of the year was. I'd love to know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you in another video soon. Bye.